Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It's the 13th of July, and as always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information. By doing that, you can easily find a way of just picking up the phone and calling the Alaska Weather Information Line, 1-800-472-0391. Find us online at weather.gov/Alaska, and of course, if you substitute Fairbanks, Juneau, or Anchorage in place of the word Alaska, or AAWU for Alaska Aviation Weather Unit, or NTWC, National Tsunami Warning Center, you should be directed to any number of our other services around Alaska and with one less click. You can also use APRFC. That'll get you to the Alaska Pacific River Forecast Center. Anytime you like. You can't find what you need online. Something's not working and you'd like to let somebody know you just want a live person, feel free to send me a note. david.snider@noaa.gov. I'm happy to help you any way I can, anytime. Of course, if you haven't checked out the latest and greatest website for the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit, we're going to tell you about one more time here because tomorrow is the magic day, maybe Monday if you're really lucky, but tomorrow the page is going to change. We've been running both pages neck and neck and parallel here so you could get used to the new page and still run home to the old page that you love so much. Tomorrow's the day that it's supposed to change, and we put a lot of effort into taking your suggestions and things that you found that didn't work and made the new page work better than the way you wanted it to. So hopefully that's the case as we get into Friday and Monday. If it's not, use that email I just showed you or use this one here. You'll find that on the website at the top there, nws.ar.awu.webauthors. It's a long one, at noaa.gov. And let us know, and I'll probably see that as well. We'll make sure the developers get those things fixed so that when you go to fly, you don't have any interruptions in your service and you get the information that you really want so that you can get to where you want safely and efficiently. So we're here to help. At least we try anyway. Here's a look at fire danger, and across the upper Yukon Valley and Fort Yukon, we continue to see areas of relatively high and even extreme fire danger there. There are a number of fires burning, and many of you have noticed in the last several days the abundance of smoke and haze across the interior and across South Central. That's been there for probably longer than that, but the gradual drifting of those northerly winds has pushed a lot of that into a lot of places where people live. And that's certainly affecting the sunsets, probably the sunrises too. I haven't stayed up quite that late to see those. But the scattering of the light makes that a pretty deep orange, even a reddish color sometimes, and certainly limits the amount of direct sunlight you're getting. So it's not necessarily cloud cover all the time. It certainly could be haze and smoke, and a lot of that is coming from fires in northern Canada and the upper Yukon and Yukon Flats region. Elsewhere in Alaska, we still have high fire danger across the coastal plain. This has changed in the last couple of days with high pressure in charge, pushing a lot of moist air in place and locking that in. That fire danger has subsided somewhat, but we still have some elevated concerns across the middle Yukon Valley, the upper Kuskokwim into the AKwx Valley, and the eastern Seward Peninsula and Kotzebue Sound and Norton Sound regions. And here's the upper Kuskokwim region. You can see south central, the Susitna Valley has a slightly elevated fire danger now, as well as parts of the Copper River Basin. So things are changing there and starting to dry out, where South Central has been just a block of no concern recently just because of recent rains there a few weeks ago. Well, things have been drying out since then. In Southeast, you're good, right? You've got enough rain in the last week or two or three to be just fine. Here's a look at the visible satellite picture, and keep your eye on this batch of clouds moving southward. If you are watching us live right now in Palmer or in Willow or in Fishhook around Hatcher Pass or anywhere around the Mat-Su Borough, you're likely getting some thunder and lightning right now. This is a batch of thunderstorms that it's made its way all the way across the upper Yukon earlier today and drifted slowly across the Talkeetnas, ran into the mountains about the time of peak daytime heating. And it's getting a little extra burst there and a lift. This is expected to continue south and west, might even make it into Anchorage tonight. We'll see. But as always, it's a really good idea to remember your thunder and lightning safety rules. Now, thunder is scary, but isn't going to hurt you there unless you're a small child and really afraid of big sounds. It happens. Sometimes it'll make me jump too. But the lightning, of course, is 50,000 degrees, and that's not an exaggeration. They really think it's about 50,000 degrees. That's something on the order of 5, maybe 10 times hotter than the sun. It's hot stuff, and it's electricity. You put those two things together, it's bad news. You just don't want to be anywhere around it. But being in Alaska, especially if you're in South Central, that would include Palmer, Wasilla, and Anchorage, of course, you forget that lightning does happen here, and you forget your lightning safety rules. So easy way to remember is when thunder roars, go indoors. Seek shelter immediately. Go away from that source of the storm, and lightning can strike out from a storm a good 10 to 12 miles sometimes. You need to wait inside at least 30 minutes after the last time you heard thunder or the last time you saw the lightning. So give that some time to go away. And usually storms in Alaska do dissipate fairly quickly, so keep that in mind. And remember, play it safe. The mountains will call you again tomorrow. You don't have to go out there and summit today just because today's the day. Here's a look at the infrared satellite picture, and keep your eye again on the low pressure across the eastern Gulf. This is swirling here, pulling in clouds across northern sections of southeast. That's where it's been rainy today. Elsewhere, things have been drying up and warming up for central and southern southeast. Saw 60s plotted for many locations there today. Out west, another wave of low pressure here, sitting across the southern Bering. That's keeping a lot of low clouds in place, pushing clouds across St. Paul and locking in areas of fog for regions just under the high pressure ridge. In fact, St. Paul and St. George today at times look like they had pretty dense fog in place. So if I remember right, today's airplane travel day, and that is not the kind of weather you were looking for, I'm sure. Up across the North Slope, looking at low clouds there. High pressure still in charge, but you can see things have kind of cleared off a little bit. The winds are switching around, a little bit of a stronger westerly flow, becoming a little light and westerly across the Beaufort Seacoast as well. And all that warm air moving northward is moving the ice around. Wait until you see the marine forecast here in just a few minutes. Today's forecast includes showers and thunderstorms across the eastern Yukon all the way into British Columbia, and of course that line that's moving off the Talkeetnas tonight moving southward. Also a lot of reports of smoke across the interior and across into Rainy Pass and Stony River. High pressure out into the YK Delta and Norton Sound at 1,025 millibars. It's a decent little ridge, and it's also in control of the Arctic right now, so that's got your winds in check and moving the ice around underneath it, but also locking in low clouds. Low pressure across the western Bering sitting at 1,017 millibars. There's the dense fog I was talking about for the Pribilovs there. A lot of stable and air and low clouds with that. Tonight's forecast shows high pressure across the northern Gulf. Showers and thunderstorms will be in the region across south central and across the Susitna Valley northward into the central and, central interior across the south-facing slopes of the Brooks Range. And that smoke will probably hang out across many more locations in the morning. For the upper Yukon, Yukon Flats, and the Tanana Valley, as well as areas in the Kobuk, Noatak Valleys, and Norton Sound region. Showers will be very close to the Bristol Bay area, Nunivak Island, the Pribilovs, the Alaska Peninsula. Out west, you can see warmer airs attempting to build in from the west there at the next wave of Pacific weather. High pressure is trying to set up shop across southeast. Will it be strong enough to get rid of the showers for your Friday? No, not entirely. It moves off into the eastern Gulf at 1,022 millibars, so we'll keep that risk of showers moving around southeast. Of course, that limits your daytime heating as well. For Friday, widely scattered showers and thunderstorms will focus a little bit more west of the Alaska Range. However, anything that develops in the afternoon across the upper Tanana Valley and into the Yukon will be capable of drifting in to the region, so keep your eye on that. But we'll say at least showers tomorrow for the Alaska Range and parts of south central. Around St. Lawrence Island, showers are possible there, and down to St. Matthew as another weak wave of low pressure moves off of eastern Siberia, and the same goes for what we see in the western chain. That warm front is mixing out a little bit, so it doesn't have a big blast of heat moving across anymore, but it is an area of low pressure, and it will stir up the clouds and showers as it moves gently from west to east there. Winds becoming a little more westerly after that passes on Saturday. You can see that's working through Adak and Atka as we get into Saturday there. The winds will again switch as that passes from more of a southerly direction to more of a westerly direction. Same goes for Kodiak Island. Showers for the Alaska Peninsula into Lake Iliamna. Places like King Salmon and Dillingham will likely see a few showers in the region. Vicinity showers for Norton Sound and widely scattered showers and thunderstorms across the interior. The Brooks Range summits, especially the central and eastern regions there, could include Adigan and AKwx Pass, and out across the upper Yukon into the Copper River Basin on the northern edge there. Across south central, probably see more clouds than showers and thunderstorms, but if this shifts just a little bit there, that could certainly make a bigger impact across more areas for the Kenai Peninsula and Anchorage. Now for southeast, showers will still be in the region there. We expect to see a better chance of rainfall perhaps around the Haida Gwaii and into western British Columbia than what we'll see across central and southern southeast, but again, rain may be in the region. Temperatures today reflected a slight drying trend we saw across southern south central with highs there in the lower to mid 60s, 59 in Hyder, 57 in Sitka in the capital city. Most of the rain again was a little bit steadier on the northern third of southeast. In south central in the interior, you can see the heat that built in. Some of you were remarking about how wonderful it was that there was a weather warning of sorts for warmer than normal temperatures around the region there. It wasn't quite a warning, but your app may have showed that to you there, depending on which one you like to use. 82 around Talkeetna, South Central and Anchorage, 73, 61 in Homer, Seward up to 83 by the afternoon. Good day to jump in the water, it looks like. 69 around Golcana, 73 in Fairbanks, 76 in Eagle and Fort Yukon, 68 for Arctic Village. 50s for the central and eastern Beaufort Seacoast around Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse all the way out toward Kaktovik, 57 in Barrow. Inland temperatures soared up to about 70 degrees up into the Colville Delta. Colville Valley anyway. 40s and 50s across the Chukchi coast from Wainwright at 46 and then milder up towards Shishmaref at 57. Norton Sound temperatures were in the 50s and 60s, but inland you can see many of the reports there around Gates of the Arctic in the 70s there from the National Park and the National Refuge. 82 around McGrath. 70 degrees around Bethel. Lake Iliamna is in the mid-70s today. The Pribilovs under clouds and fog, upper 40s, the best you could do. Savunga was 54. 50s and 60s around the Alaska Peninsula. Sandpoint was around 64. Cold Bay and Falls Pass also in the 50s and 60s throughout the day. 54 around Dutch Harbor and Unalaska. Adak and Atka both at 52. And Shemya checking in at 48 degrees. Overnight lows out there a degree cooler perhaps tonight. Take a look at the Alaska Peninsula, 40s and 50s there, 48 for Nunivak Island, lower 50s for the YK Delta for many of you, 51 in Nome, 43 around Barrow. As you get into the interior, temperatures should hover in the mid to upper 50s. Again, that's probably going to lock in some of the smoke for many locations south of Galena all the way toward McGrath. Lower 60s should do the trick tonight. Mid to upper 50s for South Central, including the Susitna Valley and Matanuska Valley into Anchorage there, closer to 58. Southeast, lower to mid 50s for you. Not much of a warm up today compared to where you have been, so probably not a big drop in temperatures. And very moist air will help to keep temps fairly mild for you. 45 in Eagle. 42 in Kaktovik, some of the cooler temperatures there on the map. High temps tomorrow still back on slow roast for Fairbanks and Tanana, Galena, all the way down to McGrath. Lower to mid 80s there, 81 in Fort Yukon and Eagle, 74 in Northway. South Central still fairly warm, maybe not quite as warm as today. Mid to upper 70s for some. Talkeetna heading up the road toward the park, 77. Southeast lower to mid 60s. South Central, Homer and Seward back in the upper 60s. So Seward, hopefully this is a much cooler day for you tomorrow. It doesn't look nearly as hot. Lower 60s around Prince William Sound, 64 in Kodiak, and the southwest coast in the 50s and 60s, 47 in St. Paul. Flying weather shows IFR conditions hit and miss across the northern Gulf, southeast, MVFR to start. A few showers and storms may still be in the region in the morning, and look for IFR from Bristol Bay all the way up the YK Delta coast to St. Lawrence Island and the Pribilovs. Most of the chain will be impacted, as well as Sandpoint in the morning and MVFR off the Chukchi coast. That improves quickly by the afternoon. MVFR starts to move into Prince William Sound and northern parts of southeast. The rest of southeast clears off nicely. IFR conditions off the coast of Seward and outside of Montague Island. And St. Lawrence Island, and Nunivak Island, Bristol Bay, Pribilovs, St. Matthew Island, and the central and western chains still under IFR conditions tomorrow afternoon. AKwx and Adigan Pass should be VFR throughout most of your daytime tomorrow. Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, we expect to see VFR conditions through most of your afternoon with showers and storms possible. Rainy Pass looks to be VFR. We expect similar conditions in Windy Pass, but a better chance for a few showers and storms there. Isabel Pass, VFR. As you get into Friday, Mentasta Pass, we expect to see VFR flying. Dehne Pass, also watching for some convection in the afternoon, otherwise VFR. Portage Pass, MVFR developing from the sound and moving toward land during the afternoon, so keep your eye on that. And Chilkoot and White Pass, we expect to see MVFR through most of your day. Freezing levels really show a lot of hot air still hovering over Alaska. The cool pool is out here across southeast, sloshing that rain up into the region. And out across the west, we've got a lot of warm air, but we don't really have a really major disturbance to move that around in any sizable fashion. So the big heat right now is out across most of the mainland, and levels in the mainland range generally from 8 to as high as 12, maybe even 13,000 feet. So icing potential is pretty high up there for most of southeast and the Gulf as well as the west coast. It's above 10,000 feet. Convection, of course, can change that on an isolated and severe way, so keep your eyes on that tonight as well as tomorrow. Thunderstorms imply the risk of severe and isolated icing. The jet stream shows low pressure across the central and eastern Gulf. That dip in the jet there is keeping a lot of the weather away from Alaska. High pressure is in charge right now with light steering winds, but certainly a north and easterly wind that's controlling the movement of those thunderstorms tonight. Low pressures across the Gulf. The wind speeds there 65 to 80 knots over the Bering. At 9,000 feet, we have a light southerly flow working up the west, 10 to 15 knots. High pressure sitting over western Yukon. We have westerlies fairly light across the north slope and interior, and light winds moving offshore across southeast, 5 to 10 knots there, with the low pressure trough sitting across the eastern Gulf and a westerly wind trying to work its way across the Aleutians at about 15 to 20. Similar conditions there at 3,000 feet. Low pressure sitting off of Haida Gwaii, 5 to 15 knots there. A little bit of an offshore push wrapping back around into the Yukon with a southwesterly flow out of the Copper River Basin, and 5 to as strong as 20 knots across southwestern Alaska. And then we're back into our westerlies across the Arctic coast, about 10 to 20 knots there. Turbulence, you're going to struggle to find that with very light winds for most of the 49th state. A few showers and thunderstorms, of course, that could imply isolated and severe turbulence and low-level wind shear. But besides that, we could see a little bit of light chop out across the far western Aleutians as you get out toward Kiska below 4,000 feet. That's a look at your aviation forecast. I'll be back with your marine weather and sea ice update here in just a few minutes.
Dragon and the Scorpion. Hey there, stargazers. I'm Dean Regas, astronomer for the Cincinnati Observatory.
And I'm James Alberry, director of the Kika Silva Pla Planetarium in Gainesville, Florida. We're here to help you find your way around the sky. Hey, Dean, what's scarier, a dragon or a scorpion?
Scorpion? Where?
All right, I forgot about your deep-seated fear of scorpions. Well, don't worry. This scorpion is hanging out in the summer stars up there in the southern sky.
Oh, phew. And the dragon must be the constellation Draco the Dragon, who flies high in the northern sky in the summer.
Yep. Plus, we'll show you how to find the planets Jupiter and Saturn.
Let's show you the dragon and the scorpion.
Okay, we have our sky set for any night this week at 11 p.m. facing south. Scorpius is one of the few constellations that actually looks like its namesake.
Scorpius scuttles just above the southern horizon as a long fishhook shape of stars. The curve marks the scorpion's tail and stinger. You might need more imagination to see his body and claws, but there's his red beating heart, the red supergiant star Antares.
Antares has inspired observers for thousands of years. It means rival of Mars because it's similar in color to the red planet. But it's nothing like Mars. First, Antares is a star and Mars is a planet. Second, Antares is one of the largest known stars in the galaxy. This is what Antares would look like next to our sun. Mars would be too small to even show on the screen. Yikes, that is a huge star.
In mythology, Scorpius was the slayer of Orion. Of course, we all know about Orion's belt of 3 stars, but Scorpius has 3 stars almost in a row. You can find them at the claws of the scorpion. Okay, they're not quite lined up like Orion's belt, but still, they're easy to find. Their names are Grapheus on the top, Deshuba in the middle, and Pi Scorpii on the bottom.
You just wanted to say Deshuba, didn't you?
You know it. Plus, Deshuba is a variable star. That means it changes its brightness from time to time. Okay, Now let's look to the northern sky and go dragon hunting. Draco the dragon lurks in the north with her tail beginning between the Big Dipper on the left and the North Star right there.
If you're having trouble finding the North Star, use the brighter stars in the Big Dipper to point the way. Shoot an arrow from the 2 stars at the end of the Big Dipper's spoon and continue that to the right, and bingo! You'll run right into the North Star.
You'll need a dark sky to see the dragon's tail that coils around the Little Dipper. So let's zoom into the dragon's head, which holds the brightest stars in this monster constellation. 3 semi-bright stars mark his head in a neat triangle. They are, in order of brightness, Eltanin, Rastaban, and Grumium. And if you're in a darker sky, you might be able to make out a 4th.
You just wanted to say Rastaban, didn't you?
Yep, I like my quirky star names.
To the Babylonians, Draco was the she-dragon Tiamat. She's said to have had a body 7 miles long and a mouth as big as the sky. Along came a god named Marduk who slew the great beast with a bow and arrow. Marduk then sliced the dragon in half, one half becoming the earth and the other becoming the heavens above.
Okay, so now we want to look for 2 planets in the night sky. The first one is easy to find because it is so bright. Face southwest after dark and you'll see Jupiter.
It's the brightest star-like object in the night sky right now. Then look south again, just above the Scorpion's tail, and you'll see a bright yellow star.
It shouldn't twinkle as much as the other stars because it is in fact the planet Saturn. Ah, my favorite. I can't wait to see it again. So get outside every night this week.
And don't forget to look for Scorpius the Scorpion in the southern sky.
Not at your feet. Don't do that.
And see Draco the Dragon in the northern sky between the Big and Little Dipper.
Keep looking up.
Here's a look at the Sea Ice Edge updated today for your viewing pleasure. Weather.gov/Anchorage/ice is the place to find this online. You'll notice with the winds shifting around yesterday, parts of the larger pack ice that's above 80% concentration broke a piece off and moved that toward Barrow. So now in the marine forecast in just a minute for the North Slope, you will see open water forecast for areas across the central Beaufort Seacoast, but around Point Barrow, you're going to see that listed as ice once again. So a lot is still changing and a lot will continue to change for the next several days with high pressure parked right about here, just keeping the winds moving around in a cyclonic, anti-cyclonic fashion, I should say. So watch for some changes there and make sure that you're keeping track on the ice. If you are moving out to sea, you see open water, it may not be there later in the day. So plan on changes from day to day and maybe even hour to hour depending on your location. Here is a look at southeast. Light winds for many locations, one exception of course, the northern Lynn Canal, 25 knots with 5-foot seas there, 2 to 3 foot seas in the central and southern parts of the Panhandle. Offshore, remember how we had that very light steering current blowing in over top at 9 and 3,000 feet? Well, underneath, the winds are even lighter, 5 to 10 knots and variable with 3-foot seas up the coast on Friday, becoming northwesterly. A more sustained northwest flow brings us 10 to 15 knots and 3 to 4-foot seas on Saturday. Southeast wind inside of Stevens Passage up the way toward the northern Lynn Canal. That diminishes to 20 knots with 4-foot seas. And we'll get a northwesterly flow in the Clarence Strait, 15 knots with a 3-foot sea on your Saturday. For South Central, light winds inside of Prince William Sound, but they're building in a little bit stronger from the east at 15 knots for tomorrow. Easterlies across the north and western Gulf, 20 to 25, 4 to 7-foot seas there, an opposing westerly flow off of Kodiak Island, 15 knots with a 4-foot sea, and light winds coming up Cook Inlet. For our friends in Kenai, tomorrow 10 knots with a 2-foot sea, and southeasterlies just west of the Barrens, 20 knots with a 5-foot sea and 3-foot seas inside of Shelikof Strait. The winds will become a little more light and variable there for your Saturday. You'll notice a light and variable flow east of Kodiak Island as well with 4-foot seas there. 4 to 5-foot seas continue up the north and western Gulf. Light southeasterlies inside of Prince William Sound just in time for your weekend. Small seas as well. And 3 to 4-foot seas inside of Cook Inlet, but that diminishes as you go northward to about 2-foot seas there between Homer and Kenai. Southerlies in the northern Cook Inlet region as well. 10-knot winds for Saturday. Bristol Bay, southwesterlies 15 knots with a 3-foot sea, 5-foot seas across the Pacific, and westerlies across the Bering Sea coast, 15 knots with 3-foot seas there. I almost feel like I want to sing this. Is it? We can do a Broadway show musical for this or something and make it a lot more interesting, wouldn't it? Light and variable flow across the Bering Sea coast, 4-foot seas, 10 knots across most of the Bering Sea near the coast, thanks to high pressure trying to hold things together across the west coast. I'm trying to hold things together as well because now I've got really crazy costumes in mind for the next show. Northerly winds across Castle Cape to Chignett, 15 knots, 4-foot seas, 5-foot seas around Sandpoint and King Cove, and 15-knot winds there coming down the Pacific coast. As you get out toward the Aleutians, central and western parts of the chain are looking at 15 to 20 knots, 5 to 6-foot seas expected out toward the west. That's where our strongest winds will be. Remember that trough of low pressure is moving from west to east. So as we get out across the east, we've still got that south and westerly flow going, 15 knots in most areas between 4 and 7 feet. Once that passes, the winds kick in a little bit more from the west, and you start to see those changes happening around Kiska to Attu, 15 knots with a 6-foot sea, and winds stay up about 15 to 20 knots for most areas in the central and eastern chain, 4 to about 7-foot seas there south of Adak and Atka. For the west coast, light winds. Remember, high pressure is still in charge here with a light southerly flow around St. Lawrence Island and St. Paul and St. George. 3 to as high as 5-foot seas expected. Still a variable flow from Nunivak Island out towards St. Matthew on your Friday. For Saturday, look for southerlies for most of the region, 15 knots, 3 to 4-foot seas for most of the Bering. Generally calm conditions there for most locations. Now for the north, here's our ice report there north of Barrow. And we get our southerlies up the Chukchi coast, 10 to 15 knots, 2 to 3, 4-foot seas there. West and northwesterlies for the Beaufort Sea and 10-knot winds, so small seas and small winds. Northeasterlies for the Beaufort Sea coast as you get into Saturday. Remember, everything's still changing around, so we get back into a stronger northeasterly flow from Barrow down toward Point Lay. That is going to move that ice around, so be on your guard. Once again, an offshore flow for Cape Lisburn and Point Hope, and an onshore push for the Kotzebue Sound region, 15 knots with a 3-foot sea. Recapping tonight's weather, smoke and thunderstorms for many across the interior. South central, better chance of storms for you tonight. Southeast looking at showers, as well as parts of the west coast. Scattered showers and thunderstorms across the interior and south central tomorrow. Showers for southeast and more of the same for your Saturday. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.